When I left my job at a marketing firm to open a bookstore, my family acted like I'd joined a cult. "You're throwing away a perfectly good career," my dad said, arms crossed like I'd just dropped out of med school. "People don't even read physical books anymore," my older sister Lauren added with a smirk. "Is it like one of those Instagram bookstores with the plants and overpriced coffee?" My brother Mark laughed. "Or are you actually trying to pay rent with it?" At the time, I didn't argue. Not much, anyway. The truth was, the bookstore wasn't a spontaneous decision. I'd saved for it for 3 years, ran projections, talked to indie shop owners, took business classes at the community center. I didn't expect to make millions. I just wanted to create something that felt like home. So I opened Fifth Chapter. Books in a walkable part of my small town in Pennsylvania, cozy chairs, local authors on the shelves, weekly book clubs, and yes, a few plants. And somehow, it worked. Slowly. There were slow days and months where I dipped into savings. But by year 2, we broke even. By year 3, I was turning a modest but steady profit. Not flashy, not failure. Still, every family holiday felt like a job interview I didn't pass. Lauren would bring her fiancé, a financial advisor, and they'd both ask passive-aggressive questions like, "Do you have an exit strategy?" Mark, who worked in real estate, would joke, "If the bookstore folds, you could always rent out the shelves as mini apartments." I'd smile, shrug. Sometimes I'd say, "It's doing fine." But I knew they weren't really listening. Then last Christmas, everything changed. It started with a call from Lauren. She never called me directly. We mostly texted or talked through Mom, but this time her voice was strained. "Can I ask you something kind of serious?" she said. "Of course," I said, already bracing for something wedding-related. But it wasn't. Her fiancé had been laid off. Their mortgage was ballooning. She was pregnant. And she didn't want to tell Mom or Dad yet because, in her words, they'd panic. I waited. Then she said it. "Do you still have the apartment over the bookstore?" "The one with the separate entrance?" I did. I'd renovated it last year. It wasn't huge, but it had its own bathroom and kitchenette. I'd been planning to list it as a short-term rental, a little side income. "I wouldn't ask," she added quickly. "But we need a place, just for a little while, and it's close to my new OB. I took a breath. "Yeah," I said. "It's yours." She was quiet for a second. "Thank you." She didn't ask about the bookstore's finances. She didn't bring up how unrealistic it was. For the first time in years, she just sounded like someone who needed help, and who thought, maybe I could provide it. When Lauren and her fiancé moved in 2 weeks later, I figured it'd be short-term, a month tops, but then Mark showed up with his fiancé, and a U-Haul. When I saw Mark lugging boxes up the bookstore's back stairs, I thought maybe he was just helping Lauren. Nope. He spotted me in the alley, wiped his forehead, and gave me a sheepish grin. "Hey, mind if we crash upstairs? 2? Just for a bit?" His fiancée Emily was behind him, struggling with a garment bag and a potted plant like she was moving into a condo, not a 500-square-foot studio. "I thought you were in Texas," I said. "Were. Market's gone. Cold. Deal fell through, commission's toast," he said, brushing it off like it was a weather report. "Figured we'd head home for a while." Except home didn't mean Mom and Dad's. It meant me. Apparently, Lauren had mentioned the space, and instead of calling me directly, Mark just showed up. Classic, I didn't love it. But I didn't say no either. The upstairs unit had once been 2 rooms. I'd knocked out the wall to make it open concept. With Lauren and her fiancé already there, it was cramped. Add Mark and Emily? It was a tight fit. I offered the couch, in the bookstore's back office instead. Mark groaned, but accepted. Still, he didn't act like a guest, more like a disgruntled Airbnb reviewer. "This place could use a real HVAC system," he said the second night. "Do you always close this early?" he asked on a Friday, like I was running a lemonade stand. "You should do more with the space. Maybe host influencers or book TikTokers." I bit my tongue. He was stressed, embarrassed, but the old dynamic was back in full force. Me, the weird sibling who read too much. Mark, the golden boy who couldn't imagine a world where I was right and he was wrong. But cracks were showing. One night, after a long shift and a quiet evening in the shop, I came upstairs to find Lauren crying on the fire escape. She quickly wiped her face. "Sorry," she said. "Hormones." It wasn't hormones. It was fear. "We're both unemployed," she said softly. "And I don't think Ryan's handling it well. He won't even look at job listings." I listened. Didn't offer advice. Just let her talk. It wasn't lost on me that the irresponsible sibling was now the one offering stability. Things got messier a few weeks later when Mom and Dad came to visit, unannounced. They walked into the bookstore like they were inspecting a disaster relief site. Mom looked around, touched the bookshelves like they might tip over. Dad scanned the register. "This place is still open?" he asked, as if surprised. Then he spotted Lauren behind the counter. What the hell is going on? It didn't take long for them to piece it together, that both Lauren and Mark were living upstairs, that I was covering most of the utilities, that I'd quietly helped with groceries, doctor appointments, even their laundry. Dad was stunned. "You're all staying here?" he asked, voice cracking slightly. Mark tried to make a joke. Lauren stayed silent. I looked at them, then at my parents, and said, "Yeah, I guess the bookstore turned out to be good for something after all." They didn't respond, just stood there, awkwardly, in a space they never thought would matter. But I saw it, the moment when their image of me shifted. Just a bit. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened next, because 2 nights later I found something in the office trash can, and it changed the entire story. It was late, after closing, but I stayed behind to finish some inventory work. The shop was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater and the faint rustle of papers. That's when I saw it, a crumpled envelope half hidden in the trash bin next to my desk. Curious, I fished it out. The return address was from a bank. My heart sank. I unfolded the letter. It was a final notice about the mortgage on my parents' house. They were behind by months, and the bank was threatening foreclosure. I sat there stunned, reading and rereading the letter. It explained so much. The stress I'd seen in Lauren, Mark's sudden return, the vague money issues they never mentioned to me. Suddenly, the condescending words from family gatherings echoed differently. "You're wasting your life. You'll never be stable. Why can't you just get a real job?" They weren't mocking me. They were scared. The ground beneath their feet was crumbling. The next morning, I confronted Mom and Dad. At first, they tried to brush it off. "We've got it handled," Dad said, trying to keep his voice steady. But his eyes betrayed him. I told them, "If you're struggling, you should say so. We don't have to pretend everything's perfect." Lauren and Mark hovered nearby, quiet, probably absorbing more than they let on. For the first time, the family had an honest conversation about money and pride and support. Lauren admitted, "I didn't want to admit we were in trouble, and I was afraid to ask you for help." Mark nodded, voice low. "I thought I could fix it on my own. Guess I was wrong." Mom looked at me, a mixture of shame and relief, and said, "We're sorry for how we treated you. We didn't realize how much you were holding together." That day, the family's dynamic shifted. Lauren and Mark committed to finding jobs quickly, while Mom and Dad began meeting with financial counselors. And I promised to keep the bookstore running, not just as a business, but as a refuge for all of us. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was a start. A few weeks later, I sat in the shop's back office, staring at the new financial plan I'd helped draft with the family's accountant. It was messy and imperfect, but it was real, and that's when Lauren walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thanks," she said softly, "for everything." The weeks that followed were a mix of chaos and healing. Lauren found a part-time job at a local clinic. Mark started, attending night classes to recertify for real estate. Mom and Dad worked hard with their counselor, facing the hard truth about finances and pride. And me? I kept running fifth chapter books like it was the family's heartbeat. It wasn't always easy. Space was tight, tempers flared, and old wounds surfaced. But around the shop's wooden tables, over shared meals, and between shelves packed with stories, something new grew. Understanding. One afternoon, Dad surprised me by helping with inventory. "I've been a jerk," he said quietly, stacking books. "Didn't see how much you were doing." I smiled. "You're here now. That's what counts." The bookstore wasn't just my dream anymore. It had become our sanctuary, a place where we all found shelter from failure, judgment, and fear, where we learned to lean on each other, not tear down, where wasting your life was replaced by building a life worth living. At last year's holiday gathering, held, of course, at the bookstore, Mom raised a glass. "To family, imperfect and unexpected," she said, "and to the little bookstore that saved us all." We all laughed, knowing that no matter what came, next we'd face it together. And in the quiet moments, closing up shop at the end of the day, I knew this. Sometimes the best chapters are the ones you don't plan.